In Luzerne County, Pennsylvania, two massive concrete cooling towers rise above the Susquehanna River. They belong to the Susquehanna Steam Electric Station, a twin-reactor nuclear plant that has been generating a constant, carbon-free stream of electricity for decades.
It produces nearly 2,500 megawatts of power, day and night, without interruption. For a modern economy, this is one of the most valuable resources on the planet. Immense, reliable, clean energy. And one of the world's largest companies had a simple plan to use it. Amazon Web Services was building a massive data center campus right next door. The strategy wasn't to connect to the public power grid like everyone else. The plan was to plug directly into the nuclear plant itself. It's the institutional version of building a private pipe straight into the city's water reservoir. You get all the water you need first, without paying to use the public system that serves every other home and business. Amazon already had an agreement for a 480 megawatt private connection. They submitted a request to double it to 960 megawatts. Enough power for hundreds of thousands of homes, all dedicated to one company at one location. Then the plan hit a wall. On November 1st, 2024, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, or FERC, the agency that oversees the nation's power grid, issued a formal order. Under docket number ER24 2172000, it officially rejected the expansion. The private wire was blocked. This one decision raises a fundamental question. Why would the government stop a technology company from plugging directly into a source of clean, carbon-free nuclear power? The answer reveals a hidden conflict buried deep inside the architecture of the nation's electrical grid. By blocking that private connection, regulators forced Amazon's enormous appetite for energy and the demand from an entire industry of data centers onto a public system that was never built to handle it. Blocking the private road didn't make the traffic disappear. It just diverted all of it onto the public highway at the same time. When a private connection is blocked, the public power grid becomes the only option. But connecting to the grid isn't like plugging in an appliance. It's like a developer building a giant new warehouse at the end of a quiet, two-lane country road. Because they weren't allowed to build their own private access ramp, the county is now legally forced to widen the entire highway system to handle all the new truck traffic. The warehouse is the data center. The highway system is the power grid. And this creates a fundamental physical bottleneck built on two very different clocks. A hyperscale data center, from groundbreaking to going live, can be built in about 18 to 24 months. But a new high-voltage transmission line, the kind needed to power that facility, takes 7 to 10 years to plan, permit, and construct. The demand arrives almost instantly in digital time. The supply of new grid capacity arrives a decade later, moving at the speed of concrete and steel. This is the problem facing regulated utility companies like Dominion Energy, which powers Data Center Alley in Northern Virginia. Under law, they have an obligation to serve. When a massive new customer like a data center shows up, they cannot say no. They have to build the new highway. And the scale of that construction is staggering. In its 2024 annual report, Dominion announced a 5-year capital investment plan of $50 billion. The vast majority of that, over $41 billion, is dedicated to upgrading the grid and building new power generation. For context, data centers already consume over a quarter of all the electricity Dominion produces in Virginia. A utility company doesn't have $40 billion in cash sitting around. To fund a construction boom of this size, it goes to the financial markets and issues massive amounts of corporate debt. It takes out the loans to build the new highway. The cost of that new infrastructure doesn't just disappear. It becomes a permanent part of the system. But this decade-long construction plan creates a much more immediate problem. The new demand doesn't wait for the new wires to be built. It creates a traffic jam on the existing grid, triggering a fierce bidding war for any available power that shows up on your bill almost immediately. To understand how a data center in Virginia makes your power bill more expensive, you have to look at something that works like an insurance market for the entire electrical grid. For 13 states in the eastern U.S., a grid operator called PJM runs this market. The idea is simple. On the hottest and coldest days of the year, when everyone is running their air conditioning or heat at once, the grid is pushed to its absolute limit. To prevent blackouts, utilities need to know they have extra power plants ready to turn on at a moment's notice. So they pay those power plants a retainer fee, just to be on call. Think of it like paying a tow truck company a monthly fee to guarantee they'll be available for you on a snowy day. That retainer, that insurance premium, gets passed on to every customer in the region. For years, this market was stable. There were plenty of tow trucks available, so the retainer fee was cheap. As recently as 2022, the price for this guarantee was just under $29. But then the grid's forecasters saw the tsunami of new data centers coming. Suddenly, it looked like there weren't nearly enough tow trucks for all the new warehouses being built. The grid's safety cushion of extra power was shrinking fast. A panic set in. A bidding war erupted for that standby power, and the price for the 2026 to 2027 delivery period didn't just go up. It hit the absolute maximum allowed by regulators, $329.17, a more than tenfold increase. The total bill for this grid insurance skyrocketed to $16.1 billion. And we know exactly why. The grid's independent watchdog ran the numbers. They created a scenario where they removed the forecasted demand from new data centers and ran the auction again. The result? The total cost would have been $9.33 billion lower. Data center demand alone was responsible for a 174% increase in the cost of keeping the lights on for everyone. The immediate problem is the price shock today. But the bigger risk is locked in for the long term. It's a question about what happens if we spend billions building a grid for an AI boom that doesn't last. When a utility like Dominion Power spends billions of dollars to build a new power plant or run miles of high-voltage transmission lines, it's not like a normal business expense. Regulators don't expect them to pay it back in a single year. Instead, that cost is treated like a 30 or 40-year mortgage. The utility is allowed to recover the cost from its customers slowly over decades. That decades-long payment plan is baked into the math of your monthly power bill. This system is stable as long as the customer who required the new infrastructure is still there to help pay the mortgage. But what happens if they're not? Imagine a town builds massive new water mains to serve a huge new industrial warehouse. The town takes out bonds to pay for the construction, a debt that will be paid off over 30 years through everyone's water bills. But 5 years later, the warehouse goes bankrupt and shuts its doors. The company can walk away, but the pipes are still in the ground. The construction bonds still have to be paid. And the only people left to pay the bill are the town's homeowners, whose water bills go up for decades to cover the cost of pipes they never needed. This is the stranded asset risk, or, as some call it, the phantom load. The demand that justified the construction is gone, but the cost remains. In sworn testimony before the Virginia State Corporation Commission, one expert, Gregory Abbott, put a number on this risk. He modeled a scenario where the massive grid expansion for data centers gets built, but the AI boom fades and that demand doesn't last. According to his analysis, if residential customers are left to pay the mortgage on that now useless infrastructure, the average monthly bill could rise from around $192 to over $315. This is the core of the long-term debate. But the tech industry and state regulators have a powerful counterargument. They argue that data centers aren't a risk at all. They're actually good for your power bill. Their case is simple. Data centers are like anchor tenants in a shopping mall. By buying an enormous amount of electricity, they absorb a huge share of the grid's fixed costs. The mortgage payments on all the existing power plants and power lines. This spreads the cost out, lowering the price for everyone else. Proponents of this view point out that for years, Virginia's residential electricity rates have been 21% below the national average, even as Data Center Alley was booming. And this isn't just an industry talking point. In 2019, Virginia's own nonpartisan state audit agency looked into this exact question. Their conclusion was clear. Under the current rules, data centers were paying their fair share. They were not being subsidized by residential customers. So, which is it? Are data centers a dangerous phantom load or a helpful anchor tenant? The answer is that both sides can be right because they are talking about two different eras. The anchor tenant argument and the state's 2019 audit are based on historical data. They describe a system that was working, based on the scale and type of data centers that existed before the explosion in demand driven by AI. The phantom load risk is not an argument about the past. It's a warning about the future. It's a claim that the sheer speed and unprecedented scale of the new demand creates a type of risk that the old backward-looking regulatory framework was never designed to manage. The debate isn't about whether the old rules worked. It's about whether they will work for what's coming next.